Magic players to the MXP San Francisco Modern 20K headliner. I am Niall Joan Rivers. I am joined in the booth today with Jerry Thompson. Jerry, how are you doing today?
I am doing great. I am well rested, caffeinated, ready to watch the Magic.
Absolutely, same here. The broadcast today is brought to us by Heavy Play, and I think we are just about ready to hop into a match. I'm really excited to see these players in action, see if any of the new OTJ cards are making a scene in Modern. Jerry, what do you think about this matchup? We've got Izzet Prowess versus Selesnya Heliod.
Well, do you want a spoiler on there not any new cards showing up, or should we just wait? Because we got at least one.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk about that a little bit.
So in the Prowess deck, Slickshot Show Off, which from the previews definitely seems like one of the more exciting cards to be in this set. And I don't know if you've gotten a chance to play with it at all. I haven't tried it in Modern quite yet, but been trying to see what I could do in Standard and in things like Pioneer, and so far it has seemed very, very strong to the point where a deck like Izzet Prowess, which is a thing that was not very popular in the last few months, now seems like kind of a resurgence as a result of this.
Yeah, very exciting. I have played the card a bit in limited, and it has definitely felt pretty powerful there, but haven't had a chance to test it out too much elsewhere. It looks like turn one here, we are going to just see land followed by. I'm actually not. Is that the mage? I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with that art.
I can't tell.
Yeah, that's a Soul Scar mage. And
I
then.
I didn't even know there was like a promo Soul Star Mage.
Well, now you know, knowing it's
I'm
after the
learning
battle.
things already.
And we're gonna shock in a land here and get a Swift Spear down. And then a little preordained. Pretty good first couple turns here.
Yeah, not bad. This is kind of small ball compared to the bigger stuff that things like Slickshot Show Off is capable of doing, but might actually provide a little bit of a faster clock, which I think you need against the Heliod deck, because when they go off, like it is just lights out. Either they have infinite life against the Izzet Prowess deck, which has probably no way to beat that, or they just kill you directly with walking.
Main deck, Mario.
Yeah, absolutely. It looks like here we are going to see Plains followed by Ariok Champion. That protection from black and from red seeming very relevant.
Yeah, that's tough. Both of those creatures are ground creatures, so definitely would have liked to see the flying from the show off. And I'm looking at the deck list here. Doesn't seem to be any way to give trample or anything to get around it, but at least you do have two prowess creatures, so you get to keep attacking into it.
Yeah, you do have two prowess creatures. They are both just big enough to not die to a block, even without any prowess triggers, so still get to sneak in a little bit of damage here and there. But
This is one of the better roadblocks out of the Heliod deck, and it's a potential combo piece too, so it's very problematic.
absolutely extremely problematic for the prowess deck.
We'll be at 14.
And still looking at the deck list, not even a way to remove that thing, no way to get it off the battlefield, and after sideboard, things don't get much better.
Yeah, it is there to stay, and it looks like we are going to see the namesake of the deck, Heliod Suncrowned, come into play.
Yeah, so not a creature quite yet, so no trigger off that Oriok Champion or anything. But the combo is very close to being there.
Absolutely.
Jesus at 14 life. I don't know if the prowess deck can close it out.
7 you need.
Yeah,
It's got a long ways to go, that's for sure.
Yeah, 5 total.
Now, Jerry, for anyone watching who doesn't know, how about you walk us through the Heliod combo and what it's trying to do here?
Oh dear, I was hoping you would ask me that. I'm not an expert.
Sure.
Basically, Heliod was something like Spike Feeder. Spider is a card that has 2+1 counters, and you can remove a counter to gain 2 life. So you remove a counter, gain 2 life. That triggers Heliod. Heliod puts a counter back on the
Trigger, I'm
spike
going to gain a
trigger,
life.
and you just keep doing that to
Up
gain
to
infinite
13,
life.
And then Heliod's going to trigger.
And
I'm going to put a counter on the Oreo champion.
then Walking Ballista, if it has 2 counters, you can give it lifelink with the Heliod and then shoot something or an opponent. And as long as the Ballista still has, like the 1 counter on it initially and it's not done, you just remove a counter, deal them 1, get a counter back, and do that to deal infinite damage. So there's a lot of different ways to set up the combo, a lot of different creatures being combo pieces, and then stuff like the collected company that just got cast to help them.
This Oreo champion is going to see this conflict event, or this Oreo
are
champion is
going
supposed
to
to be
get
featured in the battle.
another
I'm going
Ariok
to
champion
gain
off of
3
that.
separate instances of.
Yep, and a concrete mentor.
So this is going to.
Yeah,
I'm going to trigger this one first.
this
See
board
2
is looking
pieces.
really good
So
for
I'm going
Aces.
to gain 1 life first. Heliod's going to trigger.
So you have 2 creatures entering the battlefield.
Yeah.
Heliod
This one
also
sees this one,
turns
this
on
is
net
both.
because there's 5 devotion. And
So then,
I
so
guess
first trigger
there
is
are
going to put
3
2
Oreo
counters on
champion
this Oreo
triggers.
champion. Second trigger, I'm going
The
to
champion,
put
the original champion sees the 2 coming in
counters
from
on
collected
this
company,
Conclave
and then
Mentor.
the
And third trigger, I'm going
new
to
one
put,
sees the conclave mentor,
2
I
counters
believe.
Now I
Wow,
am
a lot
going to
of
enter combat.
a lot of counters
I am
going
going
around
to
here.
trigger you for-
Yeah, a lot of counters, which further disincentivizes attacking, and now you have
3 in total.
much bigger protection from red creatures on defense. And Jesus is even comfortable enough to just get that Heliod in there.
Yeah, I mean, this much life gain, these creatures that are just impossible for you to attack through. Feels a lot like the Prowess deck. Doesn't have many options here. Now, the show off is here now. It's like just being cast straight up.
I think that's good. I got 2 triggers from Oriok Champion, gaining some life, and then Heliod counters getting moved around and whatnot. Jesus at 16. I know that Grotto has a couple mutagenic growths in hand, but I don't know if that's going to be enough.
Yeah, I mean, really tough position to be in here as the Prowess player.
Gotta imagine that when you choose to play a deck like Izzet Prowess, you don't expect to play against like the 4 main deck Oriok Champion deck, especially in the 4-0 bracket. Like that's just kind of brutal. And then Jesus playing to choosing to play Heliod. Can't imagine you would think that you're going to play against like basically a mono red deck, but one of them is getting exactly what they want, and the other person is the opposite.
Yeah, and with 10 life left here, and 2 creatures that you can't block that have a total power of 9 at the moment, but can easily get bigger. And I mean, you're having to pay your life. It's win here or lose, right?
Yeah. And it might just be, all right, we're going for it to see how much we can deal.
Mm-hmm.
So Lava Dart puts Jesus to 15. 2 mutagenic growths are +4 each. I think. Ooh, and then Lava Dart Flashback would go to 14, and you have +8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You 1 point short?
Oh, brutal. Yeah, we see the players doing the math here, figuring out, seeing if this is lethal or not. They know that this is the last turn to make this happen.
Yeah, because Jesus started at 16. Kratos playing 4 spells, which is basically +4 total. Or like the 3 spells give you +4. 4 each from the growth, and then 2 from the dart plus flashback.
Yeah.
You're right.
So 12, 13, 14 from 2 darts, 1 from the power on slick shot. 1 point short.
Oh, that's tough. That's tough.
So now you got to wonder
So-
if maybe there was a way on like turn 2 to just cash in one of those mutagenic growths for 2 points. I guess that's the same thing.
And then swing out with the RF champion.
Yeah.
They have pro.
So yeah, maybe there's nothing. Maybe there was just too much Oriok championing going on here.
Yeah, that really, like, even though that was a loss, and congratulations to Jesus on that game win, but even though that was a loss, it really does showcase the power of Slickshot. You know, like, on a board where it seemed impossible for Prowess to uh, win the game there, it got really close.
Yeah, it was effectively 14 or 15 damage kind of out of nowhere. It
Yeah,
just
for
happened
like
that
3 mana. That
yeah,
was impressive.
it just fell a little bit short.
I know.
Yeah, so looking at the sideboards here, Jerry, is there anything you think they can be bringing in the prowess player to help with this matchup?
Well, you got to imagine this is not one of the decks that you would expect to play against, and that
Yeah, it's
kind
been
of
a
looks
while.
like it's the
I
case
was
given the
hoping
sideboard,
to
but
do well right now
in terms of something like
there's a
Oriok
lot of
Champion
a lot of combo decks can't
specifically,
deal with
there's
infiltration.
not a whole lot you
And
can
then with
do.
the
I mean,
emergence of
you would
with
see
prowess,
decks
it's just
like
I feel like a pretty
Rakdos
good
Scam
matchup.
boarding things like engineered
Yeah.
explosives to deal with like Sanctifier and Vec, but the Prowess deck doesn't really want to do that because it has a bunch of small stuff too. So it has things like Vapor Snag, which can kind of delay it a little bit, but is nothing close to a permanent answer. Uh, but the fact that it also breaks up the combo and maybe just gives you that extra turn you need, plus adds a little bit of chip damage too. I think that might be a reasonable thing to bring in. But other than that, I mean, like Spell Pierce, not very good against what is mostly a creature deck, and then some Alpine Moons and Blood Moons don't look particularly great either. It's just like it's not the matchup you prep for.
Yeah, it definitely seems a bit tough to sideboard for this matchup in particular. Now, on the Heliod side, is there anything in the sideboard there that jumps out to you as something that Jesus might be wanting to bring in?
It's kind of funny because you would expect this sort of deck, basically like a green white life gain deck, to already be pretty solid against creature decks.
Mhm.
But Jesus is not stopping there. Also has some Path to Exiles in the sideboard to bring those in.
Yeah.
A couple copies of Pick Your Poison if you were super worried about the flyer. But the weird thing about Show Off is probably not in play for very long, right? Like if
Mhm.
your opponent is casting it, they might just be killing you that turn, and Pick Your Poison is a sorcery. So I do like the Path to Exiles for sure, depending on like whether or not these players know each other, whether or not they're familiar with their deck lists or whatever. I mean, Crotto has a couple Underworld Breaches in their deck, and the Heliod deck could bring in stuff like Rest in Peace or whatever. But I wouldn't even really mess with that. I would probably just look to slow my opponent down a little bit and uh, bank on the fact that your combo is already set up pretty well against them. So probably just the Path to Exiles, but you have other options if you figure that you need them.
Yeah, do you think this could be a situation where, as the Heliod player, you don't want to overboard because you are already so set up for a matchup like this?
I think in general that's a pretty fine heuristic. If you look at it like, oh, I'm a combo deck playing against an aggro deck, I don't want to dilute my deck too much. But we
Mhm.
even saw in that game that Jesus was able to just win off of damage and was very cognizant of that when he attacked with the Heliod immediately.
Yeah.
So I don't think really run that risk in this kind of matchup specifically, but in general, I think that's a fine thing to kind of follow.
Sure. Well, it looks like we are about to be into our game two here. Players resolving mulligans. Looks like Jesus to mulligan, and I think that's the only mulligan we're seeing here.
Yeah, the prowess deck is pretty redundant, pretty resilient. I feel like your range of keepable hands is pretty high, whereas the Heliod deck is capable of some very impressive like sample opening hands where you're just like, what the hell is my deck trying to do? So I think aggressively mulliganing on the Heliod side certainly makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely seemed like the turn two champion last game was extremely impactful, and looks like we are seeing one of those in his hand right now. Be interesting to see if he keeps this.
Looks like
It's like 2 in his hand.
yeah, and the requisite lands to cast them, which is certainly an important part.
Putting
But
1 on bottom. And we're gonna have a turn 1 Swift Spear get in there for 1 damage.
good place to start. I do think the show off is kind of the difference maker here, especially in the face of turn 2 Oriok Champion, though.
Now, with the show off, something we haven't really talked about is it does have plot. Do you think there are ever instances with this deck where that is very relevant?
There are definitely setups, I think more so in Pioneer and Standard, where like if you're playing something like a Boros build, you have protection spells for the show off, where maybe you would want to plot it and wait to cast it next turn until you have your mana available.
Sure.
But that's not really the case with this Izzet deck. It is very much just like I'm going to play this thing, I'm going to try and attack you, and if it gets killed, well, if I waited a turn, it was still going to get killed. So
Yeah. And it looks like we're gonna see a bobble to get the triggers on both the creatures, but then a path to exile on the slick shot, which is really not what you want to see as the prowess player.
yeah, not ideal. Obviously, you want to keep your clock around, but well, definitely does have a downside, especially on Jesus's turn 1. You know, now Grotto, if they get to start popping off with like expressive iterations or like Underworld Breach or something, like having that extra mana does actually help a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like we're seeing a Conclave Mentor on the side of Heliod. Not irrelevant, but definitely something you can attack through.
Yeah, it's not a problem now, but it very well could be starting next turn. We'll see. I guess playing that over the champion because the only other land that Jesus has is a forest, right?
Yeah, yeah, that is true. And I'm not sure what altered creature this is here.
Dragon's Rage Channeler, if I had to guess.
I'd buy it.
Not sure how that is a meat wad, but I'm sure there's a reasonable explanation, you know?
All right, we are getting confirmation it is a DRC. Jesus is gonna have a spike feeder come into play. It's gonna get a bonus counter thanks to the mentor.
So the ability to gain 6 life whenever you want to.
Mm-hmm.
Not too shabby. Definitely have a lot of padding. Well, that is probably an Underworld Breach then, given the look of the
Yes,
graveyard.
I would say so. Which is of course going to trigger all the creatures.
Yeah, unfortunately, not a ton of action in the graveyard. You're sort of incentivized to just click yes on the Dragon's Rage Channeler Surveil for like anything at this point, just because you need cards in your graveyard.
Yeah, absolutely. You just want to be able to get stuff out of there.
But it does mill over Lightning Bolt too, which is not bad. Curious to see how many actual things the Prowess deck will be able to do in the graveyard this turn, because I kind of looks like it might just be one.
Maybe, but who knows what he's got in hand here, what he's able to do. Looks like we are going to go ahead and go to bolt the feeder, which is again going to trigger everything. I guess that's another DRC.
Maybe I don't know. It would kind of make more sense to me if like Meatwad were just all the DRCs and the Frylocks were all something else, you know. But
Who knows?
maybe it
Who
is just the
knows?
squad.
Yeah, maybe.
And only 2 cards in the graveyard, but got some 3/4 prowess creatures. Yeah, that's probably gonna be it.
Yeah, it sounds like both of the altars are Dragon Rage channelers.
Well, now I gotta know what the other two are.
Well, maybe we'll see them.
Keep going. Keep casting more spells. Mill more things. I gotta see.
Yeah, mill. We want to see the altars.
We need to see prowess against the mill deck, and then we'll figure it out.
Then we'll see it all. So the Spike Feeder did go down to the Lightning Bolt and did get in for a bit of damage with the Prowess triggers.
It was basically a wash. The spike feeder gained 6. Jesus
Mhm.
took 6 on the attack.
Mhm.
Horizon canopies, kind of painful.
I'm going to lose 2 life again. I'll be at 11. Spike feeders.
Oh, another one. All right.
Another Spike Feeder.
And then I guess I'll pass.
I mean, this seems pretty good if you're the Prowess player. I mean, certainly not as devastating as the first game.
Yeah, no, that's true. But now you're kind of out of gas a little bit, and the path didn't really help you all that much because you're already flooding out as the prowess player, right? So
Yeah.
6 mana, not a whole lot to do with it. Is going to be Giganta time soon, which is not really the place you ever really want to be.
I did not see the other card. I'll just remove my bed. I didn't see it
True.
over that deck.
Oh, is that a fetch
Okay,
and
six.
fail to find also? We only have 5
17.
actual lands. 3 mountain, 3 steam vents.
Oh yeah, that is a fetch and fail to find. But it does turn on the DRC.
I am going to lose all. Yeah. I'm at 16, right? 15?
Yeah, it's not exactly the most backbreaking thing to like fetch and fail to find, but
I thought I was at
it
17.
is just an indicator of like this is how flooded you are, you know?
Yeah, so I must have just.
Yeah, definitely. When you're in
Yeah, then I would've
that
won off this.
position.
Yeah, so 16. 16. Cast this Arion Champion.
And there is the dreaded champion.
Been there the whole game, but this was the first chance that Jesus actually got to play it. Oh, and here's a big one.
Yeah, Express Federation, very huge here.
We thought it was going to be Giganta time, but then we drew the best card in the deck probably.
Yeah, it looks like another one with a bobble and didn't get quite a good enough look at the card that he ended up putting at the bottom there. But this seems like it's going to be a pretty huge turn for Prowess.
Yeah, this was the thing that I was talking about with the Path to Exile, where it's like, all right, now your opponent has a bunch of mana. They just cast iteration into iteration with 3 creatures in play. It's getting out of control.
Yeah. Now, this could be a pretty good breach turn.
Possibly. Sort of tempted to wait until you have all your mana available. So yeah, I could see playing the other iteration first and really just setting up for next turn.
It looks like we are casting the second EI.
Milling over some lands, finding Vapor Snags.
Vapor Snag, the card we pointed out earlier, the only card in the 75 that he can use to deal with those champions at all.
Yeah. And again, it does help potentially bust up a combo if Jesus is forced to go for it. So now also has a little bit of defense against just getting outright killed too.
Yeah, really great turnaround from the Prowess deck here to hit those 2 EIs, get a lot more looks, a lot more options. And Gigantha's still in hand for if things start to go
I
bad
think
again.
it's going to stay there.
Sure.
What does that mean? The like I'm gonna flash my hand to the camera thing.
You
That's
know,
like
Jerry, I wish I knew.
that's the I have the nuts, right?
That's how you bluff your opponent. You're like, hey, sorry, I just have to show this to the camera. They're gonna go crazy.
Yeah.
You show 3 islands.
Well, you know one's a Gigantha, so I guess it's the same thing. It might as well be an island.
Sure.
Okay, so I assumed that the Steam Vents was like milled over earlier or something, so like it is still in the deck to fetch here, which is great. Kind of curious as to why it was not fetched earlier, I guess, but
Yeah, that's interesting.
I have seen some of the Heliod matches come down to decking, so I don't know. Maybe that was a concern, but either way, pretty next level, and you just do it now with the Vapor Snag in hand. That is when you wanted it, when you needed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like we are going to see. I'm not 100% sure what that creature is. Is that a ranger?
Ranger Captain of Eos,
Yep.
MH1 All Star. That one is kind of interesting because now Jesus could potentially use that to buy a turn.
Yeah, the sacrifice to stop the non-creature spells, very relevant.
Yeah, it seems like Krato knew that. That was like the one thing that could maybe stop him, and it's like we're gonna snag that end step, on tap with all of our mana.
Yeah, this could be a very huge turn here.
Yeah, again, but now for real, you're out of lands. Yeah. Okay.
Genuine fail to find.
Just give the deck a nice little shuffle before we pop off.
Nice little shuffle, get an extra card in the yard.
True.
What doesn't
It
it do?
does. Yeah, it does actually do something.
Yeah. Does something more relevant than be a land that does nothing.
Yes. So this is one of those things where you have kind of everything going on, but you saw Kratos slow down there a little bit, or it's just like you already got Path to Exiled once, which was maybe not a thing that you were expecting. So gotta actually think about this being a big pivotal turn. Make sure we're not going to mess up here.
Yeah, and looks like going in and attacking. Oh, and looks like it's going to be a scoop Zeus with the bolt on the stack there.
Yeah, 4 mana open, and that means 4 bolts coming. Because for some reason, Underworld Breach does not exile the card that you cast from the graveyard, because that's not how the mechanic works. But
yeah, and we are going to a game 3. I think we are going to get into a game 3 here in a second. Very exciting. It's been really cool to see these decks play against each other. I mean, even though the one game we saw with the Slick Shot lost, it was still really cool to see the new card pop off in the way it did, get so close to clutching that first game.
Honestly, it came down in turn 2 of game 2, and if Jesus didn't have the answer for it, it would have popped off there again too.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are here in game 3, resolving mulligan. I think a mutagenic growth just got put on bottom for Nuno. And there is shot.
And there is the second land. Play it too.
Yeah. And you know what? You love it. Turn 1 Monastery Swift Spear, take 1, go.
Do we love it?
I love it. Do you not love
Okay.
it?
Well, if you love it, that's all that matters.
Keep doing it.
Great.
It's happened to me so much. More so happened to me than been a thing that I've been doing to other folks, which, you know, that's a me problem for sure. That sounds like
sure.
I've been making some mistakes. But
Listen,
yeah.
my favorite part of this format are the 1-mana creatures. Young Wolf, don't get me started.
Oh. That one I'm not scared of. I am scared of the spear.
Swift Spear is scary. You should be scared of the Young Wolf, though.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe if y'all have killed me more often.
1 mana, 1/1 comes back as a 2/2. What more do you want?
A lot, actually. Maybe hate, maybe prowess. I don't know. Maybe draw some cards or something.
Well, it will draw cards. Don't you worry about that. Don't you worry about that.
Yeah, that's on a delay.
Sure.
I'm greedy. I have ADHD. I want my off now.
Sure. Then you would love Monastery Swift Spear.
Yeah. Probably. Oh, rest in peace.
Rest in peace. Jesus not gonna go out the same way. Looks like a little pull a card off the library. Call a judge moment.
Trying to organize my exile pile, and I knocked over the top 2 cards of my library.
Yeah,
So
I
this one
wonder
got
if
flipped and this one
Jesus
did not get
had
flipped.
those in his
Right.
deck
And those are
for
pulled
game
from the
2,
top.
or if it was just like, I got breached so badly. And you just immediately reach for those after game 2.
Yeah.
Give you a warning for looking at your cards. Have you received anything like that so far today? No. Take these 2 cards. You're going to go ahead and lose them in the deck. Just shuffle, right?
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Just gonna be a warning and a shuffle.
Yeah, I'll try to flip the top card of my library. Hopefully the judge will leave it up there, right? Sorry about that. Yeah, no, I'm sorry about that. All right.
From here, you all are good to continue playing. Can I get your name, please?
Jesus?
So rest in peace is there, but Swift Spear doesn't care. I think Slick Shot Show Off might be coming down this turn also. It does not care.
Does not care. Neither of these creatures care about rest in peace. That fetch land is exiled.
Yeah, I never know, you know, like playing against someone in live when you have a rest in peace and they just kind of like put it in their graveyard. It's like, you mean for that to be your exile pile, right? Like, we understand that like everything is gone.
We all know that nothing's staying in these yards, right?
Well, we do have another DRC sighting, so we have 3 of them covered.
We've seen 3. We've seen 3.
And you were at 17, right?
Believe in miracles. We'll see the 4th.
I was at 16.
What if it's just normal?
That would be so
19,
good.
18, 17, yeah.
Nothing would make me happier than if we saw just a very normal, not even like special, you know, like nothing special about it, DRC.
Yeah, just uncommon English.
Yeah.
MH2.
Looks like he's going to plot the Slick Shot this turn.
Yeah, it is interesting. I'm not sure what you're really open to do with that, like what benefit that provides you. You do kind of play around like any sort of like sorcery speed interaction at this
Sure.
point.
You play around the pick your poisons.
True. Or
That's
there's,
gonna
like,
hit.
a Fiend Hunter kind of thing, maybe, but you are missing out on a point of damage potentially.
Sure, you are missing out on a little damage there.
Well, I guess you do have the upside now where if Jesus were to tap out for something like a Spike Feeder, then it's just, you know, the coast is clear to just play this and get in for a bunch of damage. Whereas
True.
if your opponent tries to hold open mana for Path to Exile, or they hold open a bunch of mana, well, that's maybe a little suspicious. And then maybe you just don't even cast it off the plot this turn. Like, you can just keep waiting.
Yeah, and it looks like from Jesus' side, we are going to see a Ranger Captain hit the board. and get what I assume is a walking ballista.
Yep. That art I do kind of recognize. I could not tell you what Jesus' lands are. I think
That's
it's
none of our business.
none of
There's
our
a
business.
forest.
And
And I'll pass her
there's
around.
surveil land on
And-
turn 1.
Yeah.
Is the top one
And then
Rise
the other
Champion?
one's none of our business.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. Mountain that looks like a mountain.
Yeah.
I'm down for that.
Right, Ranger Captain.
Ooh, this is kind of nice. Cast the show off. In response, Jesus pops the Ranger Captain. Now if you play anything...
Quite nice.
Yeah, now if you play anything, only the Swift Sphere's bonus. So I guess this is maybe another problem with plotting instead of just casting, whereas the Ranger Captain activation, at least you would have got to fire off whatever instance you had. Now you have to wait a turn.
Yeah, it feels only good against Pick Your Poison and bad against Ranger Captain. And there are twice as many Ranger Captains as there are even potential Pick Your Poisons in the deck.
I'm going to
Yeah,
lose one life.
I mean,
Going down to 12.
you don't know for sure, right?
Sure.
So you are just doing your best guesswork, and that is completely reasonable. And like I said, if Jesus kept some mana open, you're a little suspicious of that.
Mm-hmm.
Then,
Yeah, you get to keep holding it.
Yeah,
Mutagenic Growth to save the Slick Shot. Pretty nice here.
yeah. I mean that 0 mana card to counter a 4 mana investment.
Yep.
Not bad. I mean, Crotto did have a couple mana left over, but
We're going to mill a Breach off the DRC trigger. We're going to Bolt on Crotto's turn.
Yeah. I am F6, but
that's representing 6 damage currently. So any other spell will do it.
Oh my gosh.
that is
Lightning
Another
bolt.
another lightning bolt.
3
That's
damage.
more than enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good games. Our winner of that match is going to be Nuno Crotto on Izzet Prowess. And again, we really got to see the power of the new card, Slick Shot Show Off. Really just making a ton of damage come out of nowhere.
Yeah, it looked absolutely great in basically all of those games, even though it did get dealt with in some of them, and was not quite enough in the first game.
Yeah.
Very
But it even looked good in the game that he lost, you know? Like,
Yeah, very good burst potential from that card. And the thing that I thought about going into game 3 is that these were the 2 decks that were at the top of the modern format pre-MH1, which is kind of funny.
oh, that is funny. Yeah. All right, I think we are about to get into our backup match here, Jerry, and excited to see this as well. We've got Azorius Mill versus 5-color Creativity. Now, Creativity is a deck that you've played a good deal, right?
Yeah, I'm torn because I pretty much just in the dark root for anyone playing Creativity, but this Mill deck is kind of nice and is also maybe the worst matchup possible for Creativity. I don't know. So yes, Scott is playing Mill, which is not that wild of a modern archetype, but is playing Azorius instead of the Demir, and is basically sacrificing a lot of the more all-in Mill cards for just various forms of interaction. Has a decent amount of Planeswalkers, has copies of the One Ring, has Supreme Verdict, Solitude, some Prismatic Endings, and is basically just trying to mill with Heaven Crabs and 4 Archive Traps. It's like a very small mill package.
And we are going to see one of those Archive Traps immediately with the fetch into the Triome here.
Yeah, Creativity is a deck that is all about fetching. You need all of your lands to be mountains so that you can fetch a Dwarven Mine and make a 1/1 at some point to be able to use the namesake on. So Archive Trap is just going to hit you every single... There's basically nothing you can do about it, especially in the 5-color versions. So that's a problem. And then the Creativity deck just has a very slow clock in general, too. So the mill deck is not really under a whole ton of pressure to even finish them off. Even after they quote unquote combo you with indomitable creativity, Archon of Cruelty still takes a couple turns to actually get the game over with.
Yeah, seems like exactly where Mill wants to be. And we're going to see another crab hit the board with a fetch land, so that's going to be a good amount of Mill uh, coming this turn.
Yeah, nothing like persist in Alan's deck list or anything either. So it is possible too that you could just mill over all the Archons and then you have nothing to creativity into.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've already seen so many cards get milled, and we're only on turn 2.
Yeah, and then I imagine the rest of Scott's hand is just ways to make it so he doesn't die. So it's going to be really tough for Alan to close this one.
And these players are related, so you got to imagine this is something they've played a good deal together. And, you know, one of those moments where if you're Alan here, you probably were not excited to see Scott's name pop up.
Yeah, I saw that they had the same last name, but didn't want to make any assumptions. And this makes me wonder if it's like very kitchen table esque, where it's like
Yeah.
Alan loves creativity, so Scott builds the perfect deck to beat him, and then they're just going down to San Francisco to play a little Magic, end up playing against each other in the 4-0 bracket, and Alan's like, "Come on, man, there's almost 300 people in this tournament, and you're like metagaming against me."
But it's Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Great card, love to see it.
Yeah, I saw your Discord thing is like hashtag unfable.
It unban Fable. It's innocent. It died for Bankbuster's sins.
That's what you're going with. I would kind of be on board. I don't know about the rationale, but
Sure. You just have to have someone to pin it on, you know? If I can pin it on Bankbuster, I can take heat off of Fable a bit. But I do genuinely think it's a fun card that makes fun games.
I do think that Standard could handle it now.
Sure.
Whatever that. And I also own 4 copies of Fable. I would not be upset by this. So.
Same.
Yeah, we see the token immediately get dealt with by Teferi Time Raveler. That's not great either, because Alan is playing the version of creativity with actual interaction in it. It has 3 copies of Manti, 3 copies of Reprieve. So the Teferi's not the thing you really want to see either, and you kind of needed that goblin for both a clock and maybe a creativity target and everything. So Scott has just been one-upping Alan on every single turn.
Yeah, Scott's cards have been lining up so well against Alan here, and just putting him in such a tough and awkward position. Very interested to see what Alan is going to be able to do to sort of try to dig himself out of this.
I love that Scott is just like hand down, kind of bored, looking over at the other match, you know, not really thinking. And then Alan is like so deep in the tank. Like, what do I have to do to be able to win this game?
Yeah, and it looks like we are going to see a Dwarven Mine come down. So we do have a token on board now.
That's a start.
Looks like a Leyline Binding in hand.
Yeah, do you want to take out the Teferi that is mildly annoying, or the Ruin Crab that is actively contributing to your demise?
Yeah. Tough call. Binding on the Teferi.
Binding's 2 mana too, so Domain not give either.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, depending on Alan's hand, I think that binding target does make sense, because eventually you're going to have to resolve a creativity, and maybe you are going to try and have to force that through with some amount of protection or whatever, and the Teferi just kind of invalidates that.
Yeah, definitely. If you're aiming to hold up any sort of interaction, it looks like there is another ley line in hand there.
Nope. Sorry.
And we did see a prismatic ending, I believe, on the dwarf token. So once again, Alan is tokenless, but
The Fable does flip, so you do have a potential target for your creativity should it come to that.
mhm.
And not an actual creativity, but we have a transmogrify. Basically the same thing, the 5th creativity.
And it looks like with transmogrify on the stack, Kikiji going to get exiled. Once again, Scott's cards just lining up perfectly against Alan here.
And Path to Exile is a May. You don't have to actually search and shuffle and whatnot. And Alan's one basic was on the battlefield anyway, so no reason to even do that.
Yeah. And we got a preordain from Scott. Gonna look at some cards. Got a verdict and another archive trap there.
Yeah, neither of those are terrible, but what do you actually need in this situation? What are you digging for? Maybe more lands for the grab? Like, I could see a world where you keep one or either of them, top them both, bottom them both. Like, all of it seems kind of fine to me.
Yeah, definitely. Looks like Alan just going to pass his turn.
Sure. Protection.
A one ring cast from Scott. In response to the draw trigger, Alan's going to go ahead and binding it.
Yeah, so One Ring uses last known information. It checks the amount of counters on resolution, and it has 0 counters, so Scott doesn't actually get to draw any cards. If he wanted, he could have waited till like Alan's upkeep to make him use some mana on his own turn or something, but it doesn't end up mattering.
Sorry. Crab number 2 has hit the board.
Looks like no land drop, so maybe a little bit of hope.
Looks like fetching, which I believe Scott does have the archive trap at this point.
Yeah, it does have that, and Alan's doing this on his main phase.
The dwarf token's gonna get created. Creativity has been cast.
Try this again. Obviously, Scott has the answer.
Yep, just going to get rid of the token.
The bigger one. Okay. Good.
The crab's gonna get bolted. Archive trap's gonna get played. Alan's deck looking very thin. There's one of the Archons.
Yeah, I'm curious how many
5 cards. One.
are actually left. One thing that Scott could have done is maybe let the creativity resolve.
There's one other in the graveyard. I think there's one Archon left
Okay.
in the deck there.
Yeah, at that point, I probably wouldn't. But yeah, I was going to say you could let the creativity resolve, let Alan get the Archon, and just simply eat the Archon with the Solitude.
Sure.
Because maybe,
Maybe you hit the third one.
yeah. And like you could even archive trap beforehand to see if you hit the second one.
Yeah.
But this allows you to keep a crab around. And yeah, with Alan only having 5 cards left in his deck, fetch land is good enough.
Yeah, fetch land will do it. That is game 1 going to Scott with the mill deck. And we're going to hop into a game 2 here in just a second. Now, sideboard wise, Jerry, is there anything Alan can really do to help his chances here?
I mean, yeah, there's some stuff. The card that I would love to have seen is something like Emrakul the Aeon's Torn,
Mm,
which could have posed a pretty big issue for someone trying to mill him out. And there are a decent amount of big creatures in the sideboard. There's one of each Elishnorn, an Iona, a Terrastodon. Some of those are pretty solid. Iona and Terrastodon are definitely upgrades to the Archon of Cruelty and like it being a slow clock. And I guess the 7-drop Elishnorn can kill one of the crabs, and the 5-drop one is okay against some of the crabs too. Maybe we'll see a full swap. Maybe we'll see Alan just go up more on threats in general. I think that that's
mhm.
possible, but even aside from that, there's stuff like Silence, Veil of Summer, uh, Get Lost if you wanted that. Oh, Turn the Earth actually is pretty good here because it is a flashback card that can shuffle your stuff back in.
Hmm.
So
Yeah,
that'll
that
get
seems quite nice.
milled over, and then even if they manage to mill out your entire deck, well, then you get to shuffle in like the 3 perfect cards, and maybe that's enough. So definitely some options.
Seems quite good. Now, how much, if at all, do you think play draw matters in this matchup?
Not a ton. Like I wouldn't be super upset if on the creativity side I lost the die roll because I think the games are going to go kind of long either way, but I think it does benefit the creativity deck to be on the play and just sort of force the mill deck to have the like the early clock and the ways to interact with you and stuff. I feel like Alan did what he could do in the first game in terms of like, well, I found a transmogrify, I'm going to fire that off. I'm just like, hope you don't have the answer. Okay, you do. Let's try and find the next creativity and fire that off. That sort of stuff is a lot more likely to work when you're on the play than if you're on the draw.
Sure, that makes sense. Looks like we are fetching for a land right now. Who knows if Scott has a archive trap?
Could have 4 of them.
Could have 4 of them.
Who knows?
There's at least one. We see a ring, an Ashiok. There goes the trap.
Oh, that's funny. So the first fetch lane gets an Elegant Parlor, which surveils, which you're kind of doing your opponent's job for them.
Sure.
And then Alan wanted to keep it on top, which I don't know if it was just to avoid milling or because it was a card he actually wanted. But then Scott gets an Archive Trap away the top card. And then Alan fetches again in response. Okay. The Veil of Summer.
Yeah. Pretty nice for Alan there.
Oh no, but no 3rd land drop.
Yeah, that's tough. Did Scott also miss a land drop?
No, Alan was on the play. So this should be Scott going into his 3rd turn.
Okay, sure.
Alan's even playing 25 land, which is a little bit higher than what most people play.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, especially with all those 3-mana spells in his hand there.
Yeah, I would have loved to play out Fable or Teferi, just anything. I mean, you do have Reprieve open, so you get to sort of camouflage it a little bit, where I think if you just pass on turn 3, then it looks a little sus, but...
Yeah. Does Reprieve the Ashiok, gets to draw a card off of it. Draws a card per turn. That's 2 looks for a land. Did we find one?
I don't think so. I think it would have just been on the battlefield already.
Yeah, just windmill slam the land.
Yeah, looks like we're going to clean up. This is brutal.
Oh, that's so tough.
Ooh, actually, thing I didn't mention in sideboarding is that, like, you wanted to, you could just board up to like 63 cards or something.
Very
know?
interesting. Yeah.
Basically, if you think of mill sort of like a burn deck,
Yeah.
then you're just choosing to start at like, 23, 24 life or whatever.
Sure.
I don't know if Alan did that or not, but that might explain the multiple missed land drops despite cantripping a few times.
Mills 3 lands and a Wrenn and 6. That's gotta feel a little brutal.
Yeah, Scott went from playing mill to land destruction. Also, there's a Field of Ruin, which is not Creativity's favorite card to play against.
Like seeing the Ashiok down to 1 loyalty.
Have no fear, though. Alan has Mana Tide at the ready. Don't tell anyone.
This is a very tough spot. It's like Otawara just drawn for Scott. Just an embarrassment of riches in terms of lands in Scott's hand.
Here's the Field of Ruin with the Ashiok. Can't search clause.
That's quite tough for Alan here. Going down to 1 land. Oh wait.
Oh, spells and abilities your opponents control.
Okay. That's good. He can still search. He can still search.
All right. Not quite the combo I thought it was.
Looks like finally we get there. 3rd land drop. Give it up for 3rd land drop. Fable of the Mirror Breaker. Reprieve.
Finally get there. Only to just get remanded. It doesn't look like Scott's enjoying this all that much, but I hope the game. I hope Scott is having the time of his life.
Me too. Me too.
Yeah, creativity, only 1 basic. So I can feel the ruin pretty good.
Oh, so brutal.
You do have to shuffle, though.
Just got there. First 3 mana spell all game gets reprieved. Your 3rd land that you fought so hard for gets destroyed.
And then your opponent is like, oh yeah, now I have the 1 ring.
Well, pick your poison.
Okay.
Not a 3rd land drop, but not nothing. Another 1 ring. Why do they call it the 1 ring if there's 2 of them?
Yeah, I don't understand.
Oh no! Another Field of Ruin. Alan's just so incredibly far behind at this point.
Yeah, I don't know what you can even do. Like, obviously, if you draw like 3 lands in a row, you could say, I don't know, maybe you have a shot. But your opponent also has a 1 ring going, and I don't know, 8 mana, handful of cards.
Right, and I mean, with that Ashiok on the board, your fetch lands don't even count towards like lands that you could be drawing, right? So
Yep. This is griefer magic at its finest. Like
yeah.
you're like milling your opponent out. You've got them down to 1 land to your 7. You're drawing multiple cards a turn.
Just paying for an archive trap.
Yeah, I mean your opponent can't search. Might as
Yeah.
well.
Look how many turns Alan would have not drawn lands. And it looks like going to -1 the Ashiok to have Alan mill another 4 cards and then exile graveyard.
Wonder if that means there's a follow-up Ashiok, or you just wanted to cash it in while you could. I guess the moral of the story is it probably doesn't matter either way.
Probably does not matter. Preordained from Scott. Gonna look at a couple. Still has a One Ring that can be activated. One on top, one on bottom. Here comes a crab.
On the scale of Young Wolf to Monastery Swift Spear, where does Ruin Crab fall?
I don't agree that Young Wolf is the bottom of that scale. Hold on.
It's the top of the scale.
All right. I would say Young Wolf 0.5 out of Swift Spear. That's
Okay.
where I would put the crab. It's
Yeah,
great though. I love the 1-drops.
One powerful. Do you see the second Ashiok? So maybe he was right about that. I don't know. But yeah, Scott with roughly 1 million cards.
Yeah. Now Alan has gotten to 3 lands once more.
But
However,
they all make red.
one just got blown up. Back down 2 lands.
Deck looking pretty small.
Deck looking pretty small, and all game long, Scott has just gotten to say, hey, you don't actually get to play Magic today.
Yeah, you can have a third land, but only for like 1 turn cycle, and then it has to go immediately.
Yep. And there's a Jace Perfected Mind, which I think just can -5 and do it.
Yeah, it should be more than enough.
If only one of these lands was green and the turn the earth was in there.
Yeah, but even then.
Sure. I mean, we're so far gone at this point. But that is going to be game. Congratulations to Scott. I mean, what a shutout. Game 2, right?
We had this kind of running joke on some of our Pro Tour testing teams that involve Brian Kibler, where very often he would build his deck to beat his teammates' deck under the logic that, well, if my team decides to play this deck, clearly it is quite good, and therefore other people will probably decide to play it at the Pro Tour as well. And this is kind of what this feels like.
Well, it certainly worked. Scott's going to be 5-0 going into the next round, clearly doing something right with this Azorius Mill deck. And not sure how far off we are from our next round here, but very good showings from all the players that we've seen so far. We're going to take a little bit of a break here, but we'll be back soon with more Magic. Stay tuned.